Emily, are you ready for the third part? Lost and Found. Who's going to get lost? Who's going to be found? Let's find out. Rabbit was very pleased. His plan to catch the Baxen and rescue Christopher Robin was almost complete. He and his friends had left a trail of items leading to the trap they had set for the Baxen. Now all they had to do was wait for it to show up. "Rabbit, can we stop for lunch?" Pooh asked. "We cannot rest until Christopher Robin is found," insisted Rabbit. "Try thinking of him instead of honey." "Very well," Pooh agreed. He did his best to concentrate. Then something very strange happened. Pooh's shadow started looking like a honey pot. See that shadow? Because of his hat, it looks like a honey pot. It's kind of funny. Then every time Pooh's friends spoke, all he could hear was honey, honey, honey. Next, everything beneath Pooh's feet melted into a giant wave of honey. He swam and dived and floated in the honey. He gobbled and gulped and guzzled the honey. Pooh was so blissfully happy that he sang a honey song and danced a honey dance. Life was sweet. See him swimming here in the honey? Glub, glub, glub. Let's see what else. Poof! Pooh's beautiful daydream faded. His honey ocean was really a muddy puddle, and Pooh was a great big mess. To make matters worse, it seemed his poor tummy would never get something to eat. See that? He's been eating the mud. Pooh cleaned himself off and went on his way. After a few steps, he came upon a large honey pot centered on a cloth. Pooh was so excited at the prospect of honey that he didn't recognize the very Baxen trap he and Piglet had set earlier that day. See the honey? Is there any honey in there? Pooh fell to the bottom of the pit, and before he could say, "Oh, bother," the honey pot fell on top of his head. Unfortunately for Pooh and his tummy, the honey pot was empty. Thud! Meanwhile, Pooh's friends had arrived back at the pit and were looking everywhere for him. Then, all at once, they heard a loud thud. The friends clung to each other in fear. "The plan worked!" Rabbit exclaimed. "We caught the Baxen." Emily, did they catch the Baxen? I don't think so. Let's see. After each friend suggested that the other take a look first, it was agreed they would all go over to the pit and look together. What's inside the pit? It's Pooh. "You went back for the honey, didn't you?" asked Piglet. "I told you it was empty." "Yes, and I believed you, Piglet," replied Pooh, "but my tummy had to see for himself." "How are we ever going to get him out?" wondered Kanga. Just then Eeyore arrived at the pit and showed off his new tail to the group. See his tail? It's a boat anchor. Rabbit thought Eeyore's tail might be the answer to Pooh's predicament, so he threw the anchor into the pit. It was so heavy, it yanked the friends down in the hole and broke the honey pot on top of Pooh's head. Only Piglet, who had been tossed high in the air, remained outside the trap. See them all falling in? Whoa! "Oh dear, wait for me," Piglet cried as he started to climb into the pit. He didn't want to be left alone with the Baxen running loose. "No, Piglet," Rabbit cried. "You can help us if you stay up there. Go look for something to get us out." Moments later, Piglet returned with a flower, but it was much too short to reach all the way down into the pit. Next, Piglet brought a large book. "You can't possibly think that's long enough," said Rabbit. Piglet disagreed. "Owl read this to me once, and it was certainly the longest thing I'd ever heard." Did it take a long time to read? On Piglet's third trip, he brought back a very useful rope, but since there were 6 friends stuck in the pit, he cut the rope into 6 equal pieces. "Now you can all get out," he said proudly. But the pieces of rope were much too short to reach into the pit. Was that a good idea, Emily? To cut the ropes? Probably not. Just then, Roo remembered that Christopher Robin owned a jump rope. Rabbit urged Piglet to go to the boy's house and get it. Owl flew out of the pit to encourage the terrified Piglet. When he was done, he flew back in. It was now clear that Owl did not need rescuing from the pit. but no one seemed to notice. Why doesn't Owl need to be rescued from the pit? 'Cause he can fly. Piglet, meanwhile, trudged nervously into the foggy woods, knowing he had a very important thing to do. As he looked all around, the very small animal backed into a very large tree root. Startled, he turned and saw what looked like a red-eyed monster glowing down from the tree. Do you see that monster? Does it look like a monster? Who is it? It's his friend, Balloon! Hey, Balloon! Loyal little Piglet realized that no matter how frightened he was, he had to go back and save his friend. Piglet slowly inched his way over to Balloon. A few tugs later, as Piglet pulled Balloon from the tree, an enormous shadow fell over them. Is that the Baxen? Piglet turned and faced the monster. "Baxen!" he shouted. He held on tight to Balloon and raced away as fast as he could. But there was no Baxen, only Tigger, dressed in a Baxen disguise. But now Tigger thought the Baxen was right behind him. He ran after his friend so they could flee together. "Piglet!" he cried. "He knows my name!" shrieked Piglet. "Help!" Balloon lifted Piglet up and away, but it was a very bumpy ride. Then Piglet spotted the pit in the distance. He thought if he could just reach it, he and his friends would be safe. He had nearly made it when Tigger crashed into him. See Tigger? Down into the pit they both tumbled. See the letters? The letters are all falling down into the pit. That's funny. I like this X because it's right on the grass. When the dust settled, everyone was relieved to see that the Baxen chasing Piglet was really only Tigger. And Tigger was relieved to see all of his friends. Suddenly, Tigger realized he was sitting on Piglet. "Sorry about that, little guy," Tigger said. Just then, Balloon floated up and out of Piglet's grasp. "Don't leave," called Rabbit. "You're the only one who can get us out of here," Piglet exclaimed. Owl was not the least bit upset by the setback. He began to tell a very long story, unaware that his friends were growing bored. Pooh idly looked up and saw Tigger's discarded honey pot sitting at the edge of the pit. So he decided to build himself a ladder out of the letters. So they used all the ladder from the letters. That's funny. Back above ground, Pooh examined the honey pot. "Empty," he said as he tossed it over his shoulder. Down in the pit, Owl was still talking. "That the inkwell would launch into the air," he said, "and let me tell you it packed quite a wallop." Thump! The honey pot smacked on the top of Owl's head. Suddenly, Rabbit saw Pooh's ladder of letters. "We can get out!" he cried. The friends were relieved to be out of the pit until they heard a rustling in the bushes. "Baxen!" they cried, but it was only Christopher Robin, led by Balloon. "How did you escape the Baxen?" asked Rabbit. "What on earth is a Baxen?" Christopher Robin asked. "The most wretched creature that you could meet," Owl said solemnly. "What gave you the idea I was taken by a Baxen?" replied Christopher Robin. Pooh handed him the note. Christopher Robin giggled as he explained that he had written that he would be back soon. Not Baxen. It had all been a misunderstanding. Before the friends were headed home, Rabbit declared, "We owe a very special someone a token of our appreciation. Someone who got us out of this pit and helped us to find Christopher Robin. So I bestow this pot of honey upon our dear friend, Balloon." Did the Balloon need the honey? Pooh and his tummy were dumbstruck. "Pooh's the one who built the ladder. Pooh's the one who got him out of the pit." "Sorry, Pooh," said Eeyore. "Ever have one of those days when you just can't win?" Pooh asked. Pooh's hungry tummy soon led him away, looking this way and that for the honey he so desperately wanted. Pooh kept on searching, until he ended up at Owl's house. It took all of Pooh's remaining energy to climb the tree to Owl's front door, where he pulled the new bell rope. There was something very familiar about it. Do you see that bell rope? What's familiar about it? Is that Eeyore's tail? As Owl invited Pooh in for some honey, he said, I shall treat you to an excerpt from my memoirs, which tells the gripping tale of how, only a few days ago, I found that very handsome bell rope you are now admiring just hanging over a thistle bush. Nobody seemed to want it, so I brought it home. Why was it on a thistle bush? Does Eeyore eat thistles? Did he accidentally leave it there? Probably. But somebody did want it, Owl said. My dear friend Eeyore. He was fond of it, you see, attached to it. Of course, it is Eeyore's tail, said Owl, realizing his mistake. I was just keeping it safe for him. As much as Pooh hated to leave the honey, he had to return Eeyore's tail to him right away. Pooh took the tail straight to Christopher Robin, who securely attached it to Eeyore with a hammer and a nail. What do you think? Christopher Robin asked. Eeyore considered his old tail, with which he was newly reunited. Seems about the right length. Pink bow's a nice touch. Swishes real good, too. That was good enough for Christopher Robin. Bring out the grand prize, he instructed. Thank you all ever so much, said Pooh. He climbed straight into the pot. He swam and dived and floated in the honey. He gobbled and gulped and guzzled the honey. All his honey dreams had finally come true. Later, Christopher Robin told Pooh how proud he was that Pooh had put his friend before his tummy. Thank you, Pooh replied. I don't think I shall be hungry again for a good long while. Just then, Pooh's stomach rumbled. Silly old bear, said Christopher Robin. The end. Well, that is the end of the book. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you get to listen to it again. I love you. Bye.